My name is Kevin Madden with MyMix Audio. We are here with George Petersen, and we're doing a little quick overview of the system. MyMix is a personal monitoring system primarily for musicians that are playing in a recurring environment time after time. The venue would like to lower the stage volume and also allow the musicians to get really what they want in their own head by way of in-ears. This minimizes confusion and communication with the sound engineer. Really, somebody can give themselves exactly what they want for themselves. We have a lot of tools on board that allow MyMix to recreate an ambient environment, not just putting yourself in a set of headphones in sort of an anechoic jail cell. You can really broaden a stereo image, add a little reverb if you want, trickle in some little bit of a room mic, and get a really good experience on board. Now, the station itself serves as a little mixing console, really as a standalone, not only a headphone amp, but a mixing console. So there are XLR and quarter-inch inputs. We have TRS balanced analog outputs. There's some mic pre input control. And the navigation is achieved through a scroll and enter jog dial system with some soft menu buttons here. Power over Ethernet is sourced, or you can use an external power supply. Now, the MyMix network is unique in that we can provide a musician with virtually an unlimited number of channels to pick and choose from on each of their own stations. Each station can handle up to 16 channels, combined stereo and mono. There is the ability to transmit somebody's audio that they're listening to onto the network so that, for example, a sound engineer can monitor what each musician's station is listening to. As well, if the sound engineer has a microphone plugged into their local station, it can be populated onto the network. It's a self-populating network, so that he can talk individually to different musicians with different stations or as a group. Furthermore, there's a 16-track recorder on board, allows for 24, 48K broadcast wave, time-stamped and labeled. Now, the unique thing about the MyMix station is that you digitally label the channel and the audio transmits with its identification across the network. So any station or input expander can read and present the channel with a label. Both the station, our converter, input expander box, and the individual channels all have labels that can be transmitted across the network. So the multi-track recorder is kind of the icing on the cake. Musicians can take their performances home and practice with them. If they're a new player that needs to work up a bass line, they can work with it. Or, for example, a singer-songwriter can maybe print some material onto the SD card and bring it back to the band and plug into the network and play it for everybody. And also, as I said, it could be a standalone PA system. So first and foremost, it is a superlative fidelity device. You can really crank, if you have the right headphones or earpieces, get some really good kick and bass low frequency response with plenty of headroom, broad dynamic range. It is basically CD quality audio that you're listening to. So what we've just announced is MyMix Control, which is a remote network programming, controlling, and security utility, which we'll talk about now. Part of MyMix Control is a computer plug. This is a little processor with a Linux operating system that serves as a web server for anything to access it, either wired or wirelessly. Now, this is a Wi-Fi radio. You can plug into MyMix Control with a LAN or any browser-enabled device. So this is not PC or Mac specific. If you have a smartphone, an Android, an iPad, obviously a laptop that's Wi-Fi armed. We've even had a Kindle Fire with a browser talk to this device. So any conduit, either wired or wirelessly, anything with a browser can get in here and have access to MyMix Control. There are two basic components of the MyMix Control that we're going to get individual access to. The first is the input expander. This is what allows audio out of the console into our network. So as we click on the input expander, as I said, we're in a browser window right now. We see the input expander with its MAC address. Green indicates it is online, and I will go to Edit. And at this point, we can see all of the channels. We can specify them as dual mono, or stereo, and also we have an option to kick up the gain digitally 6 or 12 dB. Now, Previously, we would label these using an actual station, so folks that are familiar with our system are really going to appreciate the fact that they can just type in the names right here on a keyboard. We can also select the input of the input expander to be analog line or ADAT in groups of 8. Now the real control and interest comes when we're looking at the MyMix stations. So you can see there are 5 stations on the network, individually labeled. And let's go ahead and pick one to edit. When we edit, first thing I'll show you is editing locks. Basically what this does is every button press or every next stage in the navigation of a station, I can put a gateway in front of and keep people from accessing. So, generally speaking, musicians, maybe they should never get past the settings menu. They can run the mixer, they can pan, they can add effects, they can do what they need to do for themselves, but they never get into settings. And in the interface, you'll notice that when you lock it, the tree underneath disappears. So we'll unlock that. And I'll just shoot one more example of something I may want to lock. This is for existing users as well. So maybe the administration file, the last choice on the menu, we don't want anybody formatting the SD recorder. We don't want anybody wiping the machine back to factory defaults, etc. So, you can just kind of lock that out. All right, so let's go back one level. And we will edit the profile of a station. Here is where I can arm the local channels on the individual stations to be on or off. I can affect the different sounds of reverb. Change your delay times, play along, etc. There's the 4-channel fully parametric EQ. And then when we get into editing the actual mixer itself, this is the main mix screen, what a musician or a user would have in front of them. Volume, tone, their onboard effects, how things are panned, and then obviously being able to solo and mute things. So if I'm a sound engineer and I have a station on the network and I'm listening to somebody's mixer, almost in real time, I can act like a monitor person again and coach somebody or change things for them. You simply apply the settings and it deploys out to the individual stations or the whole network. The whole network can be saved, the profile, or we call it a project. After a performance, it will query the system and we can save it now so that when this same band comes back a week later, just like changing a show file on a digital console, they can put the show file back for all their mixers, back the way they left them, if somebody else is using them in between. So literally everything that you can do with the station or the input expander, you can control remotely. You would be able to remotely help somebody with through any browser interface. This is going to be a wonderful setup and management tool for audio engineers, tech directors, or anybody who's smart and has ownership of the PA system.